It is not at first easy to see wherein God gives Job any answer. I cannot find that he offers him the least explanation of why he has so afflicted him. God justifies Job in his words. He says Job has spoken what is right concerning him, and his friends have not. And God calls up before Job, one after another, the works of his hands. The answer, like some of our Lord's answers, if not all of them, seems addressed to Job himself, not to his intellect, to the revealing God-like imagination in the man, and to no logical faculty whatever. It consists in a setting forth of the power of God, as seen in his handiwork, and wondered at by the men of the time, and all that is said concerning them has to do with their show of themselves to the eyes of men. In what belongs to the deeper meanings of nature and her mediation between us and God, the appearances of nature are the truths of nature, far deeper than any scientific discoveries in and concerning them. The show of things is that for which God cares most, for their show is the face of far deeper things than they. We see in them, in a distant way, as in a glass darkly, the face of the unseen. It is through their show, not through their analysis, that we enter into their deepest truths. What they say to the childlike soul is the truest thing to be gathered of them. To know a primrose is a higher thing than to know all the botany of it, just as to know Christ is an infinitely higher thing to know all theology, all that is said about his person or babbled about his work. The body of man does not exist for the sake of its hidden secrets. Its hidden secrets exist for the sake of its outside, for the face and the form in which dwells revelation. Its outside is the deepest of it. So nature as well exists primarily for her face, her look, her appeals to the heart and the imagination, her simple service to human need, and not for the secrets to be discovered in her and turned to man's farther use. What in the name of God is our knowledge of the elements of the atmosphere to our knowledge of the elements of nature? What are its oxygen, its hydrogen, its nitrogen, its carbonic acids, its ozone, and all the possible rest to the blowing of the wind on our faces? What is the analysis of water to the babble of a running stream? What is any knowledge of things to the heart, beside its child play with the eternal? And by an infinite decomposition, we should know nothing more of what a thing really is. For the moment we decompose it, it ceases to be, and all its meaning is vanished. Infinitely more than astronomy even, which destroys nothing, can do for us, is done by the mere aspect and changes of the vault over our heads. Think for a moment, what would be our idea of greatness, of God, of infinitude, of aspiration, if, instead of a blue, far withdrawn, light-spangled firmament, we were born and reared under a flat white ceiling? I would not be supposed to depreciate the labors of science, but I say its discoveries are unspeakably less precious than the merest gifts of nature, those which from morning to night we take unthinking from her hands. One day, I trust, we shall be able to enter into their secrets from within them, by natural contact between our hearts and theirs. When we are one with God, we may well understand in an hour things that no man of science, prosecuting his investigations from the surface, with all the aids that keenest human intellect can supply, would reach in the longest lifetime. Whether such power will ever come to any man in this world, or can come only in some state of existence beyond it, matters nothing to me. The question does not interest me. Life is one, and things will be then what they are now. For God is one, and the same there and here. And I shall be the same there I am here. however larger the life with which it may please the Father of my being to endow me. The argument implied, not expressed in the poem, seems to be this, that Job, seeing God so far before him in power, and his works so far beyond his understanding that they filled him with wonder and admiration, the vast might of his creation, the times and the seasons, the marvels of the heavens, the springs of the sea and the gates of death, the animals, their generations and providing, their beauties and instincts, the strange and awful beast excelling the rest, behemoth on the land, and leviathan in the sea, creatures perhaps now vanished from the living world. That Job, beholding these things, ought to have reasoned that he who could work so grandly beyond his understanding must certainly use wisdom in things that touched him nearer, though they came no nearer his understanding. Shall he that contendeth with the Almighty instruct him? He that reproveth God, let him answer it. Wilt thou also disannul my judgment? Wilt thou condemn me that thou mayest be righteous? In this world, power is no proof of righteousness. But was it likely that he who could create should be unrighteous? Did not all God made move the delight of the beholding man? Did such things foreshadow injustice towards the creatures he had made in his image? If Job could not search God's understanding in these things, why should he conclude his own case wrapped in the gloom of injustice? Did Job understand his own being, history, and destiny? Should not God's ways in these also be beyond his understanding? Might Job not trust God to do him justice? In such high affairs as the rights of a live soul, might not matters be involved too high for Job? The maker of Job was so much greater than Job that his ways with him might well be beyond his comprehension. God's thoughts were higher than his thoughts, as the heavens were higher than the earth. The true child, the righteous man, will trust absolutely, against all appearances, the God who has created him in the love of righteousness. God does not, I say, tell Job why he had afflicted him. He rouses his child heart to trust. All the rest of Job's life on earth, I imagine, his slowly vanishing perplexities would yield him ever fresh meditations concerning God and his ways, new opportunities of trusting him, light upon many things concerning which he had not as yet begun to doubt, added means of growing in all directions into the knowledge of God. His perplexities would thus prove of divinest gift. Everything, in truth, which we cannot understand, is a closed book of larger knowledge and blessedness, whose clasp the blessed perplexity urges us to open. There can be nothing which is not in itself a righteous intelligibility. Whether an intelligibility for us matters nothing. The awful thing would be that anything should be in its nature unintelligible. That would be the same as no God. That God knows is enough for me. I shall know, if I can know. It would be death to think God did not know. It would be as much as to conclude there was no God to know. How much more than Job are we bound, who know him in his Son as love, to trust God in all the troubling questions that force themselves upon us concerning the motions and results of things. With all those about the lower animals, with all those about such souls as seem never to wake from or seem again to fall into the sleep of death, we will trust him.